All right, James, welcome. Good to see you. Just saw you in the office. Um, in this edition of Conversations with Coach, as we tackle more NCAA diversity and inclusion, and then just kind of how it affects our team and the growth that we've probably made, hopefully made over the past 8 to 9 months. So if you could just kind of introduce yourself, where you're from, year, major, and those cool things.
I'm James Brugger. I'm a senior from Lake Norman, North Carolina, and I'm an exercise science major.
With aspirations of grad school here soon.
Yes, sir. Hopefully, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, we'll dive into it, so I don't keep you long. But as you're obviously aware of what we did last week with your teammate Ethan Ramsey, we want to follow up and get another perspective from another teammate or guy within our program and of your perspective. And so, first question we'll ask to kind of get started is the same lines. How did you get started in lacrosse? I know you come from a lacrosse family and background. And then what, as far as experience and diversity, have you had up until you got to Coker in lacrosse and teammates?
So for me, I started playing because my dad obviously, so he played Division I and coach and as a college coach, and then now at he's a head high school coach now, like Norman. And so I kind of got started because of him. Didn't really like it at first, and then I started to love it whenever this guy Mike Nanny really pushed me to play travel ball and really get into it. And then that's when I kind of fell in love with it, and that's when I kind of really started to love it. And then diversity wise, I mean, where I'm from, it's not super diverse. It's mainly just Caucasian white people. So I didn't have a lot of diversity. There were a few, black kids occasionally, and that was really my not much diversity really.
Gotcha. I'm fairly familiar with you guys' program and the youth program, and just kind of given the area there, I don't remember really ever. I think there's a couple of mixed kids on the team now, but I can't think back of a time at a high school game where I saw a black kid or even Asian American or anything on Lake Norman Lacrosse, which I don't think has anything to necessarily do with the program. It's just the area, right? And
yeah, it's definitely the area and the demographic that's in that area. So it's kind of just, yeah.
All right. So playing lacrosse in North Carolina, being the son of a coach, how has that changed? How has that been from being the son of a coach to here at Coker, where you're clearly are not my son? And how has that opened your eyes to, I guess, take instruction and the way your dad does things, which I fully respect, to the way that we do things?
It was definitely different. Coming here, obviously I love my dad, and I loved him as a coach. He's gonna be my favorite coach that I ever had.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you're a close second, obviously, but no, it was. I mean, obviously, it was a little harder on me than most kids, and maybe there are some games I probably got pulled where I probably shouldn't have been pulled or too early, that kind of thing. And then coming here, I mean, it's obviously different because you're not my dad, but I still look up to you like a father figure. So in that way, it hasn't necessarily changed at all. And then I love you because you're my coach. We have a really good relationship. So nothing too different other than.
I like to think I'm as hard on you as your dad, but that's a really tough task, knowing your dad. And so, here's another thing: is did the color of your coach ever come into play or ever be a question?
No, never. I mean, I just looked at you just as my coach. There was never a time where I was that than that. No, it was always just that's Coach O. He's my main man. That's my guy. Type of thing.
Got it. All right. So I guess now here's kind of where we start to get into growth, right? I think you come from a great family, a great background. They've raised you well. I know that for a fact. But have you felt yourself change your approach to the sport as far as how you treat or maybe look at black teammates? Because you technically didn't necessarily have any really up until you got to Coker. So have you felt maybe a little bit of growth from freshman year to now as a mature senior, as far as being a better teammate or being a good teammate?
Mm-hmm. Of course, yes. With my parents, they raised me to treat everyone equally and don't look down upon or look at anyone differently than other people, that type of thing. And then just coming here, just like understanding like backgrounds, just like kids like maybe like there's like things like they've come from like harder like lifestyles and stuff like that, and they've gone through things that I haven't gone through. So like I need to just like understand that like I haven't lived the same life as someone else, and just kind of like living through their shoes and realizing what they've had to go through, that type of thing.
I think there was an instance that came up a couple days ago at practice where Joe Venazio and myself were having a catch. Joe is a white teammate of yours, and Nolan DeBerry, who's a mixed kid, jumped in the middle, and Joe, just out of habit, goes monkey in the middle and like throws me the ball, and I'm a part of this catch. And Nolan turns around and looks at Joe and says, "Hey man, like you can't use that term anymore." And I thought that was like a moment for our team in a very playful atmosphere. But I think those are the things that are starting to open up, and guys are opening up their eyes to. Like that could come across as a derogatory term, but it's
Yeah.
not an opportunity for us to fight as a team. It's a learning point, right? I think Nolan knows that Joe didn't mean that by any harm by that comment. But now Joe thinks about that outside of lacrosse, right? When he says something along those lines. And so I think those are the things that the environment we've tried to create with you guys, where it's a safe space on the field. And sometimes it's just bliss ignorance, which is okay. And I think I've probably made some comments that I've now looked back on and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But they're learning and growing opportunities for us. And so I think that you're a great steward of the things that we kind of preach within our program of just keeping your eyes open, approaching everyone the same, and not assuming anything because, just because they're a lacrosse player. And so everyone's story is a little bit different. So here's my last question. As you kind of get into, you've made it aware to me that you want to be a coach, which kind of is fitting, all right, on top of your medical stuff. How do you think your approach to coaching has changed or will change? I know you really haven't done it yet. You've done it with some youth as you continue to grow into a young man. It's a tough one.
It's definitely just take up some of the things that you've been saying and like you've been preaching. It's just like being like having an open mind and understanding, and like having like a safe space in the field where we can, realize that we need to like learn some things and like understand about each other, that type of thing. Just keeping it just like as a team and family mentality, like everyone's equal, everyone is the same, that type of thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna yell at Corey Gales the same way I'm gonna scream at Steven Spurbeck, type of thing. Like that's kind of like how
I think the other thing, James, too, to think about just like is backgrounds, and that's it shapes a lot of what we are and who we are and what we do. But it doesn't necessarily absolutely define us, right? It can shape us, but it doesn't define us. And so just the way you've been as a teammate, and I've literally, kind of watched you grow from a freshman who didn't necessarily take criticism well to a senior now who, understands flaws and faults, but also holds everyone around you to a higher standard. I think we always talk about that from a lacrosse perspective, but I think the important thing is to talk about that from like a life perspective. And so the thing that you just said about being able to bring the hammer down on Corey Gales, same as you would on Steven Spurbeck when they mess up, right? It's always the mid's fault. Those same type of accountability go beyond the lacrosse field. All right. It kind of starts with our team. You create confidence and whatnot there. And then you move on, and that allows you to speak up in a public setting where I know freshmen, you definitely wouldn't have. All right.
Not.
So, those are all the questions I really have. What do you have for me? Do you have any questions for me or anything?
How have you changed in the past 7 months?
All right. So this is actually a really good question. When everything happened in March, my first thought was to identify with our Black athletes in lacrosse. This is our platform, and help them, give them a voice. All right. And that was my one, like, horse blinders. We got to help these guys out. I haven't done a good enough job doing that. As I've grown over the past 7 months, I've realized that there are other underrepresented groups within our sport as well that also need a voice. But I also understand that it's important for us and your teammates to know that the things that you thought before, you've now opened your mind to look at differently. Not that you ever viewed anything the wrong way, right, James, or any of our guys,
Yes.
but it's just like something like the term monkey in the middle, which we've used in practice plenty of times. So just kind of for us to be able to see that growth and identify it, I think is important, which is kind of why we wanted to bring you on, right, and continue this series. I think it's great for Ramsey to get his story out there because it's going to affect someone, but I also think it's important for your teammates and other Black athletes to know that you guys are listening, right? You are open your mind, and it's important for us as Black athletes in the sport to be vulnerable, continue to tell our story. So that's probably going to. I'll be honest. I was like, I need to help Black athletes out. I'm still going to, but there's also a part where I have to understand that, like, I have a group of 39 guys that we got to make sure they're all in this together and all learning at the same pace. So that's my growth moment. So, and we're going to continue it, right? So, James, I appreciate you. Thanks for asking a question too. That's good. But just kind of giving us a look into your background, your current kind of state of mind, and how it's shaped you for the future. If you got nothing else to add, we'll cut it here. But thank you so much for your time, and hopefully this is helpful for you and someone else.
Yes, sir. Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk
Yes, sir. See you.
later, James.